And the great thing was I managed to plant it the same year that my over-exploiting and damaging nature by not understanding how much we depend on way like that in these incredibly dangerous and challenging.
Behind Buckingham Palace's glittering walls, something far less regal is alleged to have unfolded. A former maid's revelations hint at a troubling reality about Prince Andrew that few dared whisper. Curious yet? Watch until the very end to hear every claim, and hit subscribe to catch more royal bombshells. What happens when the glittering image of royalty hides a very different reality? Behind the polished palace gates, former staff describe a world far from the fairy tale. Charlotte Briggs, who worked in Prince Andrew's household, says she entered with excitement but quickly sensed something was off. She once imagined a life of elegance and respect. Instead, she found an environment where tiny mistakes carried outsized consequences. Her story opens a door into a side of royal life that the public rarely sees. And according to these accounts, the prince at the center of it all wasn't the charming figure many believed. But if these habits were so striking, where did they begin? The next chapter of the story might hold the first clues. Imagine arriving each day to work in a palace, only to feel nervous about something as simple as closing a curtain. That was daily life for Charlotte and others on Prince Andrew's staff. They recall that every detail had to be flawless. Heavy drapes had to meet in perfect alignment. If a sliver of light leaked through, it could spark a storm of words. And it wasn't just curtains. Prince Andrew reportedly insisted on the precise placement of personal items. Among the most unusual requests were his well-known stuffed animals, dozens of them, each with its own assigned spot. Staff say there were written instructions for arranging every single toy. A missed position could lead to a sharp rebuke. For those tasked with these chores, it felt less like service and more like walking a tightrope. But even this is only a glimpse. To really understand the pattern, we need to look back to the beginning. Former staff often describe the atmosphere in a single phrase: walking on eggshells. It wasn't only about tasks being completed, it was about completing them without the slightest flaw. Something as small as a pillow being off-center or a towel folded the wrong way could draw immediate criticism. Many learned to plan their movements carefully, hoping to go unnoticed. The worry wasn't simply that a job might be redone, but that a sudden outburst could echo through the corridors. For new staff, the first weeks felt like a test. For those who stayed longer, it became a constant state of alert. This daily pressure raises an important question: how did such patterns form? To find answers, we need to look at the prince's earliest years. Those who observe Prince Andrew as a child recall a boy full of energy and charm, yet also someone who liked to push limits. Family staff remember how he sought attention in ways that set him apart from his siblings. Where others were quiet or studious, he often wanted to command the moment. He was known to tease the Queen's guards, trying to break their famously still expressions. If they didn't react, he simply tried harder, determined to get a response. What might have seemed playful to some hinted at a deeper need to control situations. Even his interactions with animals, according to some long-ago anecdotes, showed a rough edge that worried caretakers. It was behavior that drew early corrections from those around him, but instead of softening with age, those patterns reportedly hardened as he grew. As Prince Andrew entered school, his personality became even more visible. Classmates gave him nicknames that suggested a quick temper and a taste for teasing. Stories circulated of practical jokes that went beyond harmless fun, like disrupting other students' camp gear or testing teachers' patience. What some might call youthful mischief, others remembered as a desire to dominate every situation. Teachers and housemasters hoped he would outgrow it, but the reports suggest that the same streak of willfulness only deepened over time. By the end of his school years, he carried a reputation for confidence that could easily tip into arrogance. This early portrait matters because it helps explain the man he became, one who often seemed to expect the world to adapt to him. As a young adult, Andrew entered royal duties with advantages few could imagine. Unlike his older brother Charles, he had no path to the throne. This gave him unusual freedom, but also fewer responsibilities. Some former aides believe this combination, high status with little accountability, fed habits of entitlement. They noticed a sharp contrast when comparing him to other family members. Charles, Edward, and even Prince Philip were remembered by staff as generally courteous. Andrew, in many accounts, seemed to expect instant obedience instead. This isn't to say that every interaction was harsh, but the overall pattern painted by staff suggests that respect often flowed only one way. The question lingers: when privilege meets minimal limits, how does it shape someone over decades? Moving into the 1990s and 2000s, new challenges emerged. While many royals were seeking to modernize their public image, Andrew's choices often sparked criticism. Stories circulated of extravagant spending and frequent use of private flights, earning him the nickname Air Miles Andy. Observers began to see a gap between public duty and personal lifestyle. His confidence sometimes read as indifference to changing times, and his friendships with wealthy power players raised eyebrows. Each headline added to an impression of someone who preferred comfort and admiration to quiet responsibility. And within palace walls, former staff say, the daily demands continued unchanged. Far from softening with age, the old patterns of perfection and quick temper reportedly remained a constant. As years passed, more voices joined Charlotte Briggs in describing what it felt like to work in this environment. One recalled being summoned across large rooms simply to draw curtains that were within the prince's reach. Another described the pressure of setting every object exactly, from pajamas to polished shoes. These weren't isolated stories. Several former employees, speaking at different times, gave similar descriptions of tense mornings and strict instructions. One longtime household member compared the experience to being on duty every second with no margin for error. Such accounts, while impossible to verify in every detail, share a striking consistency. They paint a picture of a household where small imperfections could spark large reactions, making each day feel like a test. What made these reports so startling is the contrast with the smiling royal seen at public events. In photographs and official visits, Prince Andrew often projected charm and confidence. Yet behind closed doors, staff say, the atmosphere was far different. This contrast raises an intriguing question. How well can anyone truly know a public figure? A polished appearance may hide tensions that only those closest to the day-to-day can sense. For viewers, it's a reminder that public life and private behavior can be worlds apart. And as more stories emerged, the difference between the two grew harder to ignore. Over time, the combination of public criticism and private tension had visible results. Prince Andrew gradually stepped back from many official roles. Ceremonies once central to his royal calendar no longer included him. At major events, he appeared apart from his siblings, dressed not in ceremonial attire but in an ordinary suit. Observers noticed the subtle gaps, fewer greetings, briefer conversations, and a physical distance during processions. For someone raised in the heart of royal tradition, these changes spoke volumes. They signaled a shift not only in public duty, but in family relationships themselves. It was as if an invisible wall had been drawn, marking a new chapter in both his life and the monarchy's. Life today is a striking contrast to the busy, high-profile schedule Prince Andrew once knew. For decades, his calendar was packed with official visits, ceremonies, and global trips representing the monarchy. Suddenly, that familiar rhythm slowed to a near standstill. Without those engagements, each week now unfolds more quietly. There are no packed press calls or grand parades waiting on his doorstep. Even within Windsor's walls, where royal life continues around him, his role has shifted to the background. People who once worked alongside him say the change must feel dramatic. For years, he was at the center of royal events, ribbons to cut, speeches to give, receptions to host. Now the invitations are fewer, and the cameras rarely turn his way. The change extends to personal security and daily routines. Where once a full team managed every movement, those layers have been pared back. He reportedly had to appeal for certain protections that once were automatic, a practical sign of how far his public position has shrunk. Imagine being accustomed to decades of ceremony and then suddenly facing quieter mornings and unfilled afternoons. For many people, retirement can be an adjustment. For someone raised in constant spotlight, the contrast is even sharper. This isn't merely about schedule changes. It is about identity, about waking up and wondering what purpose each day will bring when the old duties no longer apply. Friends have quietly wondered how he fills the time. Long walks on the estate, private reading, perhaps moments of reflection. Some observers suggest that the quieter life could offer a chance for growth. Time away from constant public attention might allow anyone to pause, reconsider choices, and think about the legacy they want to leave. Others wonder if stepping back after so many years of protocol feels less like freedom and more like isolation. Occasional appearances still happen, family services, private gatherings, and a few events with long-standing personal connections. But these are rare and carefully planned. There is no longer the steady rhythm of royal duty that once shaped every season. In many ways, the change is like moving from a fast-moving river to a still pond. The surface is calm, but it also reflects every detail more clearly. And that stillness leaves room for questions about reputation, relationships, and the memories that remain in the minds of those who once worked closest with him. Life after the spotlight isn't only about fewer public events. It is about adapting to a new chapter where status no longer shields from reflection. For someone whose world was defined by rank and ceremony, that may be the greatest adjustment of all. Beyond individual anecdotes, there's a wider story here, one that reaches past a single royal and invites us to think about how power and character interact. Privilege, when it stretches across a lifetime, can build invisible walls. It can make it hard to hear honest feedback or to notice small habits that others find difficult. It can also make it tempting to believe that rules and courtesies that guide everyday life simply don't apply. The accounts from former staff about precision demands, sudden tempers, and tiny details that carried heavy weight are more than memories of palace work. They become lessons in how unchecked habits can grow quietly over years. Even in the grandest households, respect and humility are not optional. They are the foundation for trust and loyalty. When those qualities are missing, even the most beautiful setting can feel cold and tense. Charlotte Briggs and others who decided to speak out may not have done so to dwell on the past. Perhaps they wanted to shed light on what respect in the workplace should look like, no matter how famous or powerful the employer might be. Their voices remind us that kindness is not about titles, it's about daily choices. Think about the difference between someone who listens and thanks others for their effort, and someone who demands without pause. Over years, that difference shapes reputations more than any public ceremony. It creates memories that stay long after uniforms are put away and palaces grow quiet. The bigger picture also invites a question for all of us. How do we treat people when no one else is watching? Do we show patience when plans change? Do we notice the quiet work that makes our own lives easier? These reflections matter beyond royalty. They speak to workplaces, homes, and communities everywhere. Power, whether it comes from position, wealth, or even simple authority, can become a test of character. The true measure is how that power is used when the world isn't looking. Prince Andrew's story, as described by those who served alongside him, illustrates that lesson sharply. A lifetime of privilege may bring comfort, but it also brings the responsibility to lead with fairness and gratitude. When those qualities are missing, the cost eventually shows, not only in public opinion, but in personal relationships and lasting legacy. Whether every account is remembered exactly as it happened or not, the consistent theme is unmistakable. Character shines or falters in the quiet moments. And perhaps that is the most enduring takeaway. The finest titles and the grandest estates cannot replace everyday decency. What remains in history's memory is not just what someone achieved, but how they made others feel along the way. As you think about these stories, consider how they echo in ordinary life. Maybe it's in how we speak to coworkers, how we greet neighbors, or how we respond when something doesn't go our way. Every interaction, large or small, adds up to a reputation that outlives any formal role. That is the deeper lesson hidden within the royal drama. Influence is temporary, but kindness and respect create the kind of legacy that never fades. Prince Andrew's journey, from favored royal to a figure on the sidelines, illustrates a powerful truth. The way we treat others often echoes louder than any public speech or grand event. Fame may fade and roles may change, but memories of everyday interactions last far longer. So what do you think? Do these accounts reveal long-standing habits finally coming to light? Or are they just rumors that grew over time? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this story eye-opening, check out our next video exploring more untold royal moments and hidden histories.